what we need to do and what we have created is an opportunity now. Albert Reynolds described it as the best opportunity in 75 years.
Yes, you say you understand the hurt, but there's no expression of remorse or sadness or regret or any of those things.
Well, I mean, these, if you're asking me, do I feel guilty?
Yes, I was going to ask you, do you feel guilty?
Of course I'm sorry about many things which have happened. Of course. But I would have felt guilty if 25 years ago I had acquiesced to what was happening in the situation in which I, as a teenager, came face to face with a statelet which didn't recognize my rights as a human being.
Yes, but do you feel guilty, for example, about young Begley, for example, after the Shankill bombing? You carried his coffin. Now, he was a 22-year-old who regarded you as a hero. You were his hero.
Well,
do you feel responsible or guilty about him?
Well, I have never tried to dodge my responsibility, and I accept that people in public life, especially people who are in an anti-establishment struggle, must accept a responsibility. But let's not denigrate that young lad, Thomas Begley, because he was a human being in his own right. Mm-hmm. He took decisions. He decided to do something, not because someone, he wasn't, I didn't know the lad, but I presume he wasn't an unthinking human being. He took decisions out of the situation
he was a young 22-year-old.
But I'll tell you the difficulty. That all those in high places who were prepared to heap the blame for the last 25 years on that 22-year-old. The young lad from Ardoyne, no work because he was a Catholic, discriminated against, his parents discriminated against, British troops all the time, back and forth, on top of that, a small, beleaguered area which has suffered most of all.
Let's talk about the innocent one. Tim Parry's father sat on that seat where you were sitting after the Warrington bombing. And have you feeling for him?
Oh, absolutely.
For the boy's mother?
Absolutely, and I said so at the time. What happened was wrong. And many things which the IRA have done have been wrong. And I have said that. And I don't say it now because the cameras are here. I come from within a situation where there has been conflict for 75 years. Now, what Sinn Féin and what I and what others, and for example, if John Hume and I have done a service, it has been to show that it doesn't have to be the way it was for the last 25 years. Because, and I'm sure people here would accept it also, you turned on your television, you saw the cameo of the last atrocity, you saw the funeral scene of the wives of the family behind the hearse, and you didn't like it, and you were guilty about it, maybe back consciously. But 25 years of censorship, 75 years of partitionism, of provisionism, almost brought about a guilty toleration of it. And what Mr. Hume and I did, if nothing else, was to show that there was a way out of it, that it wasn't intractable. But it doesn't have to be the way it has been for the last 25 years.
You personally, did you, for example, meet Gordon Wilson today? Was he there? Yes. And after Enniskillen and what happened to him and so on, a most forgiving man. What did you say to him? And what did you say anything to him?
Yes, I spoke to him twice.
Yes.
First of all, I commended him in my speech for his fortitude and for his forgiveness, and I extended solidarity to him and to all the bereaved families.
Yes.
See, because there are many.
And what did he say? What did he say to you?
Well, I mean, that was, the man, in terms of his public persona and what he has said, was the same privately. I don't think it's fair to go into personal or private conversations, but we had a good conversation, and I think it was useful, and it was good.
But you have been an apologist for the people who did that thing to him and his daughter.
Well, let's not just zero in this interview on the politics of the last atrocity. I mean, what happened to Enniskillen was wrong. Now, what has been happening for the last 75 years?
But you have been defending, Gerry, for 25 years, the people who were responsible
I never
for it.
defended what happened in Enniskillen. And I've never tried, by the way, to distance myself or to dodge my responsibility on these issues.
But you have upheld the armed struggle, and you spoke out in favour of the provisional IRA, and you said their actions were justified. You've done that for 25 years.
Because of a situation which existed, and let me repeat what I have said many times, that in a situation where people see no alternative, as it was here 75 years ago in the city, where people went out and did exactly the same thing.
There's actually no comparison. But
can we develop that? I don't want to get into an argument, but let's develop that.
If everything goes right and peace breaks out and it's permanent, a word that you're reluctant to use, what happens to you as the leader of a small minority party? Will you be happy with that situation thereafter?
Well, I mean, I'm not a career politician in the sense that I'm rather on an ego trip or after any personal lucrative career. So whatever happens, I'm an Irish Republican. I want to see an Irish Republic.
Do you mean you'll get out of politics?
Well, I might, but I would like to think that I've been so long in struggle that the struggle will continue. We need to deal with the fact that so many of our young people are scattered throughout the world, that a third of the people in this state live below poverty level, that we've got unemployment, that we've got people being driven off the land, that we've got the breakup of rural. I would like to think I would have some contribution.
So what is it eventually you're aiming for? Is it a Marxist republic, a socialist republic, a what?
Well, we want an Irish Republic based upon the 1916 proclamation, the ownership of Ireland for the people of Ireland. The people of Ireland, men and women, coming together to shape out a democracy.
And was it all worthwhile? All those dead people, damaged people, injured people?
Let's wait. Let's wait. You see, because when I got involved in the civil rights struggle, and I was only 17, the demand was for the right to vote at local government elections. And that's, if you think back on it, what started the last 25 years.
Is that a justification?
No, it isn't. But that's what started it. Because the statelet couldn't afford to give the Catholics in the 6 counties the right to vote at local government elections. And the British statelet couldn't afford to let that situation endure. They moved in the British troops, and we, all of us, got sucked into a cycle of ongoing
an escalation.
conflict.
Yeah. Okay. One last thing, and there are other people who want to talk to you after the commercial break. How do you react to the fact that, whether you like it or not, a great number of people have ferocious animosity and antipathy and abhorrence towards you personally for your part in the last 25 years?
Well, it's difficult to know. You see, I think we all have 2 personas. You know, there's your public persona and your private persona, and there's my public persona and my private persona. I think I'm a nice guy. You probably think you're a nice guy.
You think you're a nice guy?
But we are. And what we have to do is to try to bring about a situation where we can actually put all of this behind us. And if I'm prepared to sit down with the people who tried to kill me, who tried to kill my wife and who tried to kill my son, who killed my brother-in-law and who killed my cousin, surely it's good enough for me to ask them to reach out the hand of friendship and sit down and talk with me and those that I represent.
Okay. There are other people who want to talk to Gerry Adams. Whom you know. Dermot Ahern, Fianna Fáil TD for Louth and co-chair of the British Irish Parliamentary Body. Jim Kemmy, Hugh Leonard, I beg your pardon. Hugh Leonard, first of all, who's written on many occasions in his column about the situation. Jim Kemmy, Labour TD for Limerick East and chairman of the Labour Party, and Michael MacDowell of the Progressive Democrats. Let's start with Austin Currie. A reaction there, Austin, to what you've heard so far, please.
Well, I watched the 9 o'clock news, and there was great hope on that news this evening because of the Forum for Peace and Reconciliation. And I know that everyone is hoping that that peace will last. And I had discussions with Gerry Adams as a member of the SDLP in 1988, along with John Hume and Seamus Mallon and Sean Farren.
I don't think I was ever a member of the SDLP.
I had discussions with you as president of Sinn Féin, along with my colleagues in the SDLP. Okay. Yeah, well. And so certain things were discussed at that particular time. And I had hoped at that time that an alternative would have been provided so that Sinn Féin could have asked the IRA to call off their campaign. It didn't happen at that time. It has happened now, and I give credit to Gerry Adams and his colleagues who've done that. And today I was sitting at the Forum in Dublin Castle in St. Patrick's Hall, and I saw the symbolism of the situation, and I welcome the fact that Sinn Féin, IRA, the Republican movement, are now involved apparently in the political process and recognise this state and recognise the institutions of this state. And I hope that process continues. But listening to your discussion and having heard Gerry Adams' speech today, in which he said very nice things, things like, and I quote, he wanted to make peace a reality. To make peace a reality is the challenge facing us all. It is also Sinn Féin's main function as a political party. Now, I'll proceed on that basis. There are two questions I want to ask. To make peace a reality. Since the ceasefire was called, there have been so-called punishment beatings in places like Belfast and Armagh and Newry and Derry. And last night, in Cookstown, in my former constituency, there was another one, which has resulted in a young man being in the South Roan Hospital in Dungannon tonight with a broken leg. 5 masked men went into his house. They held his wife captive until he came home. When he came home, they hooted him. They then interrogated him. They gave him 24 hours to get out of the country, and they beat him up so badly he's in hospital. Right. Now, it was members of his organisation that were responsible for this and for other beatings up at a time when there's supposed to be a total cessation of violence. Now, I want Gerry Adams to condemn that. I want him to tell us that he will tell his colleagues in the other wing of the Republican movement to stop their activities. And I want him to make sure, and he said this also in his speech today when he was talking to the forum, he said that, I haven't got the exact quotation here, but the freedom to live in their own country and not to be ordered out. Now, I want him to do that. That's one request.
Right. Okay.
Now,
hold it there. Hold it there. Okay, hold it there.
There's a second request I have.
Austin always had a graph with a long question. But let's deal with it. First of all, these assaults are wrong. I've said that. I've said that in the past. And if you've been listening to the news... No, hold on, please. No, Austin, did I interrupt you once? Did I interrupt you once? Did I interrupt you? I didn't interrupt you.
Right,
now, first of all, you said that members of my organisation were involved in this incident. Members of my organisation were not involved in this incident or any other such incident. Now, let me give to you the figures which the RUC provided to my office yesterday. Since the IRA announcement on the 31st of August, the Loyalists shot 14 people in punishment shootings. 14 shot by the Loyalists in punishment shootings. The IRA has shot no one. According to the RUC, 11 people have been assaulted in nationalist areas. 11 people in 8 weeks. I'm sure there will be 11 people assaulted in Dublin tonight and tomorrow night as a result of drunken brawls and all sorts of other brawls. Now, I'm opposed to these so-called punishments. I'm opposed and Martin McGuinness did sterling work years ago arguing against punishment shootings. Now, you know, you used to live in the north. Let me finish, please.
I know something about this.
No, but you
had 20 minutes, nearly half an hour. You nearly had half an hour with
20 minutes and 25 years isn't very long.
I'm asking you a specific question.
Yes. I'm not a politician, as you know. I'm just here as a party pooper. And I've been listening to a phrase, internment without trial. And I keep thinking of the people that were murdered without trial. I'm not talking about the police. I'm not talking about the army. I'm talking about people that were shot dead on their doorsteps, through windows, in the presence of their children, their parents, and their wives. These people in their graves are crying out for retribution, and it's not going to come anymore. And there are people who are not in their graves. They're in hospitals. They're in wheelchairs. There are girls who thought they were going to grow up and never will. And young women who thought they were going to get married, and they never will. And they'd rather they were dead. And there are people, too, that they don't want to be dead because their brains are destroyed. They're vegetables, and they're going to be vegetables forever. And you are morally responsible for that. Morally, you are a murderer. And not only are you a murderer, but now you add the extra dimension by saying, I want peace, and you're a hypocrite as well.
And you obviously don't want peace.
I want peace, but there is a price to be paid, you know.
Oh,
if you lie down with dogs, you're going to get up with fleas.
Well, let me say that I know many of the people that you have described. And unlike you, I don't come here to be sanctimonious and to engage in theatrics. I want to see peace. I want to see an end of all that has passed for the last 25 years. And unlike you...
Are you morally responsible for these murders or not?
No more than you are. And I've never dodged my responsibilities in any of this. And unlike you, I am prepared, to the best of my ability, to do something to bring that...
I don't think I ever shot anyone.
Well,
I don't think I was in charge of a brigade of the Provisional IRA.
All right.
I don't think... Weren't you?
No.
You were accused of being in charge of two brigades.
Then you were not accused of me of being a murderer.
And you never sued for libel. Why?
Well, I might sue after tonight.
Yes, but you were never sued for libel then. Why?
Have we come here? And I know that a woman in the audience made the point. I was going to make it. You know, there's no gender balance here at all. We have 4 politicians who are males facing 1 politician who's a male. Now, leaving that aside, are we going to come here? Are we going to come here tonight? Because we can have this row anytime. You know, we can have this row. Yes, we can.
No, we can't.
We can go back into the hospitality suite and argue about it. You know, but let's try and be constructive. Let's try and be constructive, because what we have here is an opportunity which Mr. Reynolds has described as the best opportunity in 75 years to bring about peace, to put all of that behind us, and let us seize that and try to do something about that. And that's what we need to be positive about. Of course, you can recriminate. We all could. But it's better to try and move the situation forward.
You start the fire. It's a bit late to join the fire brigade.
Well, I don't want to join the fire brigade.
Dermot.
Yeah, Gay, could I just say, I think, you know, we've been listening, and I would agree with the 2 previous speakers. I would condemn wholeheartedly what has gone on. But I think we have to be positive about the situation. I mean, the joint declaration was put together by the 2 prime ministers in an effort to get people like Gerry Adams away from supporting violence or in any way espousing it. And that has been achieved over the last couple of years. And the joint declaration allowed that situation to develop. And we now have it in an intriguing day today where Gerry Adams and his people have been party to a democratic forum. And I think that we have to look forward rather than looking backward. Obviously, there are questions like Austin has put that have to be answered by Gerry Adams and other people like him. But I think we have to be... We have now got these people into democracy, which we've been trying to get for the last 10 years at least. Before that, I think we had given up on them. But the reality is they have now accepted this. And I accept their bona fides by being here tonight. I accept their bona fides by taking part in the forum, even though it's quite difficult for constitutional politicians like myself, like Austin Currie and others here, who have always tried to convince those people that what they were doing, particularly in our name, in nationalist names, was in effect putting back any unity in this country, unifying of people, and doing away with borders.
Okay, Michael MacDowell.
Well, I was just listening to what Gerry Adams was saying there, and I was listening to his interview with you earlier, Gay, and a number of things struck me, especially listening to what Hugh Leonard just put to him now. The other day, a young man was kidnapped north of the border, and he was produced south of the border in Monaghan. And he was produced by 2 men who wore balaclavas, and all this, you can read about this in the Irish News. He was produced in his bare feet, and he thanked everybody for looking after him so well, and he thanked the people who were his captors for allowing him to go to the toilet unattended. And that young man has in fact now been served with an exclusion order from Northern Ireland. And in the last few weeks, Gerry, people have been brought in by the provisional movement to Milltown Cemetery and have had their limbs broken over tombstones with iron bars. That's happening as a result of activity by provisionals. And you could stop it if you put your heart and soul behind a campaign to stop it now. If you and Martin McGuinness said, that must stop. That must stop now. And if Albert Reynolds said, if you want to sit at the forum again, Gerry, and all your pals, one more of those punishment beating by your people in the north, and we'll adjourn the next sitting of the forum.
Are you saying he said that, or he should?
No, I'm saying he should. If Albert Reynolds and you and people like that have the moral courage to stand up to these thugs and savages who are mutilating people now, wearing balaclavas, and having poor young Egypts saying to them, I'm grateful to you, as they stand in their stockings, and in their bare feet, saying, I'm grateful to you for the right to go to the toilet unattended. That happened. That young man was in Monaghan in the custody of those two thugs. They are provisionals, Gerry. Don't pretend they're not. And we know, the audience here knows, the people looking at this programme know they're provisionals. And you can stop it, and Martin McGuinness can stop it, and all of your pals who are at the top of the provisional pyramid can stop it if you want to. But you don't, because you want... Because hold on a second, can I just finish? Because you want to create the illusion that there's a policing problem in Northern Ireland, which I accept there is, and therefore that you and your pals, as fascists, have the right to bring people into graveyards and smash their limbs, because you're filling a vacuum, and that is obscene.
Okay. Well, you see, I think that Michael gave himself off in the last line, because he asked me this very long theatrical question.
It's not theatrical,
no, let me finish. I didn't interrupt you.
Every detail of it is true.
Every time I sit here quietly, being preached to by those who have spoken, and I don't interrupt you. When I come to speak, you interrupt me. Now, first of all, I want to see an end to all acts of violence in that state. I think we've come an awful long way. Who could have thought 8 weeks ago, 10 weeks ago? You certainly didn't. Mr. Leonard didn't in his Sunday Independent outpourings. Others, Mr. Currie, didn't think it was possible.
I did, yeah.
Excuse me, didn't think it was possible.
For you to
bring,
stop...
No, excuse me, please. Are you going to let me finish? Because, you know, there are no cheap... I'll be back in the north. I'll be back in Belfast. I'll be back in a heavily militarised zone. You know, there's no point in making cheap shots. I can come on here and make cheap shots also. Now, we need to, of course, stop all acts of violence. Of course we do.
What are you going to do?
Now, let me finish. Now, I want to come to a central problem which you glossed over. There is no policing problem in the north, you said?
I didn't say that. I
The
said there was a policing problem in the north.
There still is.
Did you hear me?
Please,
I said there is a
please,
policing problem in the north.
Don't, please let me
Sorry,
finish.
Gerry, I said there was a
Are you going to let me
problem.
finish?
No, excuse me. I said there was
Are you
a
going to let me
policing problem.
finish?
No, hold on a second.
This is a bit like
I'm not
Castlereagh.
misquoting you. I'm not misquoting you, Gerry.
Well, let me
I
finish.
said there was a policing problem
You've said
in
it
the
4
north.
times. Thank you very much for conceding that there is a policing problem in the north.
before.
It's central. It's central to the situation there that we don't have a police force. And we have to, as part of a negotiated settlement, of course we have to end all the acts of violence, but we have to get a policing service. I listened to a man phoning your programme during the week. I was travelling in the car, and he spoke about a young fella breaking into his car, and he did it with a hurling stick to catch him. And he said he felt like whipping him with it, but he brought him round to the guards. Now, he was able to bring him round to the guards. He said the guards came, they were professional, and so on and so forth. Now, if you live in any of the areas, the nationalist areas, right across the 6 counties, the RUC is not acceptable. Now, we need a policing service which is acceptable.
Gerry, I accept what you're just
Now,
saying.
now,
I accept
well,
what
then
you
let
just
us
said.
deal with
But
that.
would you now explain to the viewers listening at home, hold on a second, Austin, would you now explain to the viewers listening at home why that young man was barefoot in County Monaghan, where there is a Garda Síochána force,
Well,
why he was in the
first
custody
of all,
of 2 men with balaclavas, and why he was thanking them for the privilege of going to the toilet unattended. Would you mind telling me how the absence of police north of the border justified that?
So that I won't be accused of interrupting you, maybe you'd reply to this short question when you were replying to his. The RUC is, of course, unacceptable in many nationalist areas of the north. It's unacceptable in nationalist areas. Now, don't you be interrupting me.
Name one.
I'm not saying you're not
Name
going to
one
catch
area
me
which the
saying
RUC are acceptable.
I am saying the RUC is unacceptable in the nationalist areas in the north.
Okay.
But
Thank you.
your organisation is determined that it will remain unacceptable. Now, I'll give you an example, and I want your reaction to
How do we
this.
make the RUC
Last
acceptable?
night, just wait.
How do we make the RUC acceptable?
Just wait now, just wait. Last night, in St Matthew's Parish, in East Belfast, the local RUC organised a meeting in a Catholic hall. The purpose of the meeting was to explain to old people in particular what they should do to prevent burglaries in their homes, to prevent intimidation of young thugs and that sort of thing. His organisation, and I can't deny it this time because a picket was put on that Catholic hall to prevent people going in, and it was led by a Sinn Féin councillor.
Fair play to them. I commend them.
Right.
I commend them.
What's wrong with picketing? Ordinary.
We're not allowed to picket.
It's not picketing.
We're not allowed to picket.
Come on now, you're trying us.
No, I'm not trying you. Austin said a picket.
Look, let's put it this way. There's been a number of lies stated on this programme tonight so
Thank you
far.
for admitting
And I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised because a man who would take your life or who would condone taking your life, a lie certainly wouldn't choke him.
Well, now let me just leave with this issue. Sorry.
Can I take a break first, please? Can I take a commercial break first? Okay, let's take a break here. Thank you. We'll come back after.
I'm aggressive to Mr. Adams on the Late Late Show tonight, and my answer to that would be along these lines, that I believe a great number of people feel extremely angry about Gerry Adams and his association with the Provisional IRA down through the years. And if that anger is not released, if it is swept under the carpet, as it were, then it seems to me that the peace process is incomplete. And therefore, if he feels antagonism, and he's experienced antagonism, if you have from me or from...
I've got it from Austin before and from the rest of them.
And from Hugh Leonard. Then it seems to me that that is part of the peace process in itself, and you have to take that.
I'm glad you've joined the peace process.
Yeah, indeed. Well, that's part of the peace process in itself, and we have to go through this. Meanwhile, Jim Kemmy. Yes, Jim.
Yes, Gerry. First of all, can I start off on a positive note by welcoming the ceasefire and the peace we've had for the last 2 months and all the lives that have been saved.
Yeah. That's good.
It's a pity, perhaps, as Bernadette McCallister said, I wouldn't find myself in her camp much at the time, that this did not happen years ago. She claimed that all this was possible years ago, and it wasn't acceptable to the Sinn Féin then. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. I leave that to one side. I'll also leave recriminations about punishment beatings, which are going on, certainly. I agree with Austin and Michael. That's happening. We're not fools. Also about Gerry Adams. It's not that anybody's out to get him at all. But he's no altered by or wilting violet. He can take care of himself. He said he wasn't a career politician, but he's as skillful and as articulate at evading questions as any politician that I've ever seen.
As you are.
No. The one thing I'm noted for is answering questions and never ducking questions. I won't duck any questions tonight.
I'm only joking.
Well, I'm glad to see you have a sense of humour as well. You came a bit late in the day for you, mentioned to quell one.
You couldn't be a Republican without a sense of humour.
Let's deal with the issues on the ground. The answers to Northern Ireland gear will not be found in extreme nationalism, extreme unionism. They'll be found through compromise on both sides. All our tomorrows are there to be lived, especially for the young people out there. And there's a yearning for peace in this country by most people.
Yes.
They want peace.
Yes.
They hunger for peace.
Yes.
They expect people like me to support the peace initiative.
Yes.
But I would be failing in my duty tonight and failing my own party if I didn't point out the pitfalls that are there. You must have compromise. You must have give and take. And sometimes the unionists will refuse. And they're the largest group. Gerry Adams represents a minority within a minority, the larger group of the SDLP. And like my own parties in government with Fianna Fáil, we must agree to things every day in that partnership government that we don't like.
You could have fooled us.
No, Gerry, whose side are you on from one of these programmes? But Gerry, democracy must only work that way, through give and take. I just can't go into a table and demand something must be done. And Sinn Féin have a journey to come to achieve that. And just going on and putting forward a simple scenario that sometimes Gerry Adams is putting forward, life doesn't work that way. Life will not work in Northern Ireland unless we face reality on the ground and do it step by step, including the arms that you asked me about. And I wouldn't want to duck that question during the interval.
What the arms? The surrendering of arms now?
Yes.
Well, put it down.
That must come. Yeah. That must come.
When?
The reason it hasn't come on top of the agenda at present, that most people are so relieved that the ceasefire has lasted for 2 months, that hoping the longer it goes on, the more permanent the ceasefire will be. It has been pushed down the agenda. But it will come up very soon. It will come up very soon.
Are you stating that, Jim, or asking it? Or?
I'm stating that it has to come up because it can't be ducked on both sides. I wouldn't want to see the arms surrendered in Northern Ireland. It can be as easy as possible for Sinn Féin and IRA to give up the arms, the same with the unionists, loyalist paramilitaries. It can be as easy as possible for them. But sooner or later, those arms have to be handed up.
Right.
That question must be faced.
Did you want to add something?
I want to ask a question, and not a provocative question at all. Although any time when I was being a bit passionate, you accused, I think you used the word theatrical, and I wasn't being theatrical, but I want to ask a straight question. We've been talking about the stepping down of the provisional, let's call them the foot soldier, maybe call them that, in the street. Nobody's ever put a face upon the provo in the street, as it were. Now, I've been in Belfast a lot, and the story goes that many of them are unemployed people who joined the provisionals, that one day they were nobodies, and now suddenly they're in the street, they're into this, they're into that kind of thing. What I'm saying is they have a different lifestyle in the provisionals than they had before they joined the provisionals. Are they so easily going to give up that lifestyle, I wonder? I think that is a solid rock deterrent to the peace process.
Can I deal with a number of issues here? And I'm glad to see the moderate influence of Jim Kemmy and Dermot Ahern, because we do have to look positively at these things. And I know there's passion, and of course there's recriminations. I mean, some of these parties have censored my party, have marginalised my party for over 20 years. And you know, it's often been said by people in the north, we don't have a united Ireland because of the policy of London, but also because of the policy of Dublin. And we have to all bear our responsibilities in all of this. I would like to ask your audience, and I want to come to Q's question in a moment. I mean, would any of you like the British back in this state? Would any of you like the British back? Now, would any of you like to live under British rule? Please let me finish.
I'll ask another question.
Please let me finish.
How many of you and how many people in the 26 counties have been put off the idea of a united Ireland because of the activities of the IRA and the loyalists?
Fair enough. Fair enough.
In answer to a query on the telephone, nobody was specially invited to our audience tonight. Nobody. Yes, sir.
Jim Kemmy speaks about compromise, which I'm sure we all agree with. In a united Ireland, what would Gerry Adams offer the Unionists by way of compromise?
Well, I think first of all we have to talk about these matters. I think that the Unionists have fears. I think some are irrational and some are genuine. And I think we have to try and face up to an understanding of setting aside misconceptions and conceptions. And I think we're very open. If there's a need for for whatever is put forward as compromise, I think that we have to be flexible. We have to go in to all of this with generosity, with a willingness to compromise, and with a willingness to be flexible. And I actually have quite a lot of confidence in grassroots unionist opinion. I think the unionist people want to see the last 25 years put behind us also.
Lady in blue, yes. Can you give me a bit more time, Brian, if you can?
I would like to ask Mr. Adams if the giving up of arms on both sides includes the 200,000 legally held guns in the north.
Well, I have always made the point that we need to be involved in demilitarisation. And I mean, the biggest armed group are the British Army, the state police. Then you have the Loyalists. The Loyalists, in fact, in many regards, armed by British military intelligence. And you're referring to the arms which are legally in the hands of the Unionists. And sometimes the demand, when it's put stridently, is almost to ask nationalists in the north to disarm unilaterally. I don't think that's the way that which would work. I don't think that's practical, but I think what will work is to move forward, as has been explained earlier, into a settlement which removes all of the guns, all of them, the official ones, the unofficial ones, the legal ones, the illegal ones, the state ones, the IRA ones, the loyalist ones. Let's get them all out of the situation.
Yes, Michael.
Can I just develop that point? You've spoken, Gerry, on several occasions, and I welcome, by the way, that the IRA have given up killing, and I welcome the fact that the Loyalists have given up killing, and I welcome you into democratic politics.
I'm glad you've said something positive. That's of course,
and I want to say this, and I want you now to prove that you're just the same as the rest of us in one respect.
No, I'm not the same as the rest of you.
In one respect, and that is that you don't condone brutality without firearms. But I want to ask you this. You've spoken about British rule of Ireland, and ending British rule in Ireland. I want to ask you this. Do you see Northern Ireland remaining part of the United Kingdom for the foreseeable future? Isn't that the truth of it? It's going to. Everybody knows it's going to. So why don't you level with your supporters and with the Irish people and say it is going to remain part of the United Kingdom for the foreseeable future, and now let's talk about how it can be made into a just society.
Well, you see,
why don't you face up to realities?
Well, I think, first of all, I want to state, I don't know if people missed that. I'm not the same as the rest of you. I'm me.
Now, let me finish. I know you're better.
No, I'm not better. No, but I'm not worse. No. I'm not better, but I'm not worse. Now, let me continue with this theme. You see, United Ireland is a very logical, honourable political view. Please. And let us, when we sit down, make sure that everything is on the negotiating table. And I'm not talking about the 6 counties joining the 26 counties and us coming into this situation. I'm talking about a new Ireland. I have used the term to transform Irish society, to build an unsexist, a just society, a new society in all of this island.
So we're all trying to do that.
Okay. Well, then let's sit down and talk about it, and let's not mention United Ireland in case it offends the unions. Let's sit down and let me finish, Michael. Please let me finish.
You've had plenty of time.
No, let me finish.
Would you not
please.
answer the question that was put to you? Can Northern Ireland remain part of the United Kingdom?
No, because I'll tell you why. Because it has failed. You see, when something doesn't work, you fix it. Now, we've tried to fix it, we've tried to work on it, we've tried the civil rights campaign, we've tried everything. The politicians, some leaders of the parties here have said that it is a failed political entity. Mr. Major in Belfast last week said there could be no internal settlement. Mr. Hume has said the same, Mr. Reynolds has said the same. So there can be no internal settlement. So let us then look at building something which works. And let us approach the unionists frankly and honestly, because one thing the unionists will tell you is that when you speak to Sinn
Féin, they want to remain part of the United Kingdom.
The one thing they will tell you about politicians is that you know where you stand with Sinn Féin. And we stand fair and square on the right of the people of this island to decide our own future. Well, let's talk about it. Well, let's talk about it, Michael.
I too believe there can be no entirely internal settlement, and I've always believed that. But we can't ignore the fact that there are close on 1 million people who belong to the different tradition on this island. They will not be bombed into United Ireland. They have to be won over. It is for those of us who believe in an agreed United Ireland in the future to win those people over. And they're certainly not going to be won over by using the bomb and the gun against them. And can I just conclude? Gerry has turned around to me a number of times and asked me to shut up. I know the reason, and I know the reason for that. I know the reason that because over the years, throughout my political career, I have stood against violence, whether it's violence from his organisation or violence from the Loyalists. And one of the reasons I feel so strongly about it is because I and my family have suffered as much as he has suffered, and yet we've been non-violent. So we have suffered over the years, and that's one of the reasons I'm so strongly opposed to violence, and I'm saying we're in that forum for peace and reconciliation. Some of the matters that we have discussed tonight that have come across as being strong divisive issues, those are the issues that are going to have to be solved.
Absolutely.
The punishment beatings, the use of violence while there's supposed to be a ceasefire on, that has to be settled. The other matters that I have mentioned tonight, those have to be settled. Otherwise, we're only fooling ourselves. And this is so much rhetoric.
See, there at least.
Last word.
Okay, well, there at least we have agreement. Because all of these matters have to be tackled. Okay. They all have to be talked about. We all have to move forward. But let us not face into the future as if the Unionists weren't human beings like ourselves, as if we couldn't argue the toss with them. Let us go in to the negotiations with a view to winning the Unionist consent, to winning Unionist agreement, to moving the entire situation forward. And let us ensure that the London government, because this hasn't come up really an awful lot tonight, that Mr. Major's government doesn't squander this momentously historical opportunity that we all have to build peace.
If he does, what will happen?
We will in years to come, sit back, and our children will sit back and see 1994 as the coming together.
You mean the ceasefire will collapse?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying the only danger, the only threat to this process is the faltering, hesitant way the British, today, the British wouldn't even send an ambassador.
You mean the ceasefire would be in danger?
No, I'm not saying. I'm saying the entire peace process, the last 25 years, has come to this moment where hope has met history. Where hope has met history. And let's build on that, and let's make sure that Mr. Major builds on it in the same way as Mr. Reynolds has built on it. And let me agree with Austin Currie. Of course, let's have all these issues on the table for discussion to seek agreement about. Because I think that we, the people of this island, have the intelligence and the wit and the creativity and the right to shape our own future.
Okay, we're up against the block.
All brutality to stop.
All brutality to stop. Thank you for joining us on the Late Late Show. Thank you, gentlemen, all for joining us. That's all we have time for. God bless you. Good night until next week. Good night to you. Goodbye.
On-camera handshake. Gay Byrne stood rather than sat for the early part of the interview, and Gerry Adams wouldn't let the introduction pass without retort.
Well, first of all, I would dispute your intro that I'm the most controversial man in Ireland, and invite you to come and sit beside me and we'll talk this out.
Gay Byrne did join him, and he pursued the point, on and off, for the next 20 minutes. Audience reaction suggests they did not favour dwelling on the past.
That whether you like it or not, a great number of people have ferocious animosity and antipathy and abhorrence towards you personally for your part in the last 25 years.
Well, it's difficult to know. You see, I think we all have two personas. You know, there's your public persona and your private persona, and there's my public persona and my private persona. I think I'm a nice guy. You probably think you're a nice guy.
You think you're a nice guy?
So we are. And what we have to do is to try to bring about a situation where we can actually put all of this behind us. And if I'm prepared to sit down with the people who tried to kill me, who tried to kill my wife and who tried to kill my son, who killed my brother-in-law and who killed my cousin, surely it's good enough for me to ask them to reach out the hand of friendship and sit down and talk with me and those that I represent.
The second half of the interview saw Gerry Adams confronted by 4 politicians and a playwright, none entirely supportive and some openly hostile, particularly about so-called punishment beatings by Republicans.
First of all, these assaults are wrong. I've said that. And I've said that in the past. And if you've been listening to the news... No, hold on, please. No, Austin, did I interrupt you once? Did I interrupt you once? Did I interrupt you? I didn't interrupt you.
And after Austin Currie, an even more impassioned attack from playwright Hugh Leonard, remembering those murdered, injured and bereaved by the IRA.
There are girls who thought they were going to grow up and never will. And young women who thought they were going to get married and they never will. And they'd rather they were dead. And there are people, too, that they don't want to be dead because their brains are destroyed. They're vegetables, and they're going to be vegetables forever. And you are morally responsible for that. Morally, you are a murderer. And not only are you a murderer, but now you add the extra dimension by saying, I want peace, and you're a hypocrite as well.
And you obviously don't want peace.
I want peace, but there is a price to be paid, you know. If you lie down with dogs, you're going to get up with fleas.
Well, let me say that I know many of the people that you have described. And unlike you, I don't come here to be sanctimonious and to engage in theatrics. I want to see peace. I want to see an end of all that has passed for the last 25 years. And unlike you...
Are you morally responsible for these murders or not?
No more than you are. And I've never dodged my responsibilities in any of this. And unlike you, I am prepared, to the best of my ability, to do something to bring that...
I don't think I ever shot anyone.
Well,
I don't think I was in charge of a brigade of the Provisional IRA.
All right.
I don't think... Weren't you?
No.
You were accused of being in charge of two brigades.
Then you were not accusing me of being a murderer.
And you never sued for libel. Why?
Well, I might sue after tonight.
Yes, but you were never sued for libel then.
Well, joining us to discuss reaction, we have journalist Dick Brazel, who's joining us live from Cork. Dick, he's certainly got the audience sympathy. Has he got public sympathy as well?
Yeah, I think he's got a national sympathy, which is surprising. It's probably that Sinn Féin have won their one war, which is the media war down here, in that the reaction post the programme has been almost 80% of the people who have phoned into RT, phoned into the Cork Examiner, our own paper, have suggested that Mr. Adams was set up on the programme, but basically that he handled himself very well.
What are the implications?
Well, the implications are, I think, that people who said that Sinn Féin would be exposed when Section 31 was lifted and when the ban in Britain would be lifted have failed in their claims. And in fact, I think that Gerry Adams this morning is a much higher profile and much more acceptable figure in the South than a lot of people would have accepted he would be.
Do you think the media in the Republic are now going to have to rethink how they deal with Gerry Adams and Sinn Féin?
I don't think they'll have to. I think the media have been dealing with Gerry Adams very fairly and have been representing the concerns people have about Gerry Adams and about his past. But I think the television programme as it was presented seemed to be so weighted against Mr. Adams that people suddenly built up this almost support for him on the programme. And on top of that then, Adams himself was very, very controlled and very professional. I must say that it's a different Sinn Féin we're seeing now that the ban has been lifted. It's a Sinn Féin that tomorrow morning, I think, in a general election in Ireland, Gerry Adams could run in up to a dozen constituencies and be elected to Dáil Éireann.
Do you think there's any possibility that there's some kind of fashionable appeal about it, in that people haven't seen Gerry Adams before, largely, first time, for example, on the Late Late Show?
Well, I always felt, knowing Gerry Adams and meeting him in press conferences before the ban was lifted, I always felt that he was the type of man who could probably come across on television very well. I think he's proven that now, and other people like Mitchell McLaughlin the same. I think that there's certainly a problem. If you want to take out the past on Sinn Féin, it's very difficult to take out Gerry Adams, because Gerry Adams is almost charismatic, I would suggest, in the South now.
Well,
and I think the same as in the US as well.
Very quickly, sorry to interrupt, Dick, but there's a by-election, Sinn Féin standing down your neck of the woods. How's it going to go?
Well, it'll be very interesting. Gerry Adams will be here next weekend, and I believe he'll probably get a bigger reception than many of the other political leaders who came here. But unfortunately for them, it won't be reflected in the polls. Their candidate is a low-profile candidate. Probably not now at the election polls, but I would fear what the implications are in a general election. I think Mr. Adams has certainly set the ball rolling with the Late Late Show appearance, at least.
Dick Brazel, thanks very much for joining us.